Alright, so today we're going to do a Tesla front drive unit oil pump reverse mod. So here we have a stock front small drive unit oil pump. And as you can see, this unit, the inlet and the outlet are on opposite sides of the pump. That's how you know you're dealing with the front drive unit. So the first thing we should do is remove the plastic gear on the top. There's a single C clip holding it on. So you just gotta do that. And I'm gonna be using a Ziploc to keep all these parts together. And also because there's some oil on them, which you wanna leave. So now you can push the shaft and the bottom should pop out. Like so. And here you have the main rotor. Just keep all this together. I'm gonna dry it off a little bit. You have a O-ring or a seal right here. You want to get that out of the way. All right. I just kind of want to clean up some ATF fluid that's still in here. Make it easier to work with. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to remove this cap here so we can remove the piston and the spring from the regulator. So actually I'm going to take the bottom back here. I'm going to put it back together. There we go. And we're going to go over to the vise here. All right. So this aluminum's pretty soft, and these steel jaws will mar the aluminum. So I recommend you use something like this. And these are soft, just like magnetic soft jaws attachments. Pretty awesome. Just kind of snap on like that. All right, so we're going to put this in the jaws of the vise here. Kind of like that. Make sure it's really on there. Okay. I'm going to use an Allen wrench. There it goes. Now this has some sort of thread sealant or thread locker. It's pretty strong to crack, but that's the cap. And now when we take this off, we can get the spring and the piston out. All right, so now there's the spring. There's the piston. So kind of went like that, right? So we're going to modify the cap here. We're going to drill a hole right through the center. And we're going to save these for later. And then we got to drill a hole right about there for the vent port. All right, so we've got it mounted in the drill press here. We're all lined up. I'm gonna just add a little bit of machine lube. Add a little bit of light. And there we go. right, so now we got to remove the outlet and replace it with a 90-degree elbow. So to remove the outlet, we're going to use fire. So before we do that though, it can be a little difficult to get this out. So I like to use a hose clamp. I couldn't find a smaller hose clamp. You got to use a pretty small, a hose clamp meant for a 1/2 inch tube here. There we go. So I'll just get this on, and let's see, which way am I gonna, I guess I'll pull it this way. Yeah, that seems right. So just putting it on like that. So I'm just using a propane torch. Gloves on. Be very careful with the torch. Basically, you want to get this part really hot. Wow, that's loose. Make sure that's not loose. So it's the side opposite of the regulator cap. I'm starting to see smoke come out. It's usually enough. A little more. Shut this off. Boom. But there you go. That's how you get the nozzle off. This thing is going to be really hot for a while, so we're just going to set it down and let it cool off. And then we can move on to tapping this hole and installing the 90-degree elbow. All right, here's our 1/4 inch MPT tap. And so this hole is a little larger than you'd like it to be for a 1/4 inch MPT tap. But it does work, especially when you use a little bit of thread sealant. I like using the Permatex thread sealant plus lock in one stuff. It's got like blue thread lock and thread sealant. So anyhow, you just want to make sure you start with this thing as square as you possibly can make it. Look from 2 different axes and make sure. Look straight up and down. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Now with the MPT, the diameter is getting larger as you go further. So it starts out pretty easy. Then it starts to get tighter and tighter, and thus more difficult to turn. So I'm starting to feel it bite. Now the trick is you don't want to go all the way yet. Okay, it's starting to really get tight, so I'm going to back it all the way out. And okay, I still got more than a 1/4 inch to go. So I'm gonna grab the 90 elbow and just peep it real quick. So here we have the 90-degree 1/4 inch MPT male, 90-degree to 1/2 inch hose barb. They're kind of hard to find sometimes. Sometimes they're on Amazon, sometimes they're not, and you gotta go, McMaster they got them. I'm sure you can find them if you look hard enough. So the trick is, so we still got a ways to go, but you want to cut the threads to the exact right point to where when you tighten it, it gets tight about here, because you want to end up like that, and you want it to be tight. You don't want it to be loose in there. So that's kind of a, I wouldn't say a challenge, it's just something you got to be mindful of when you're doing this. It's just don't just do it all the way, because then the thread might end at the wrong clock position. When this is done, you want it to be pointed down a little bit, because the differential is going to be basically right here, and the hose is going to be coming up like this. So we just want to make sure it's a little down, and it's pretty tight right there. I think we're good. Basically, we want to drill the hole. There's these two reinforcements here. Just on the inside of this one is where we want to drill the hole, right in the center of the barrel line. Now, the one thing I just want to be extra careful for is that when I drill through, when I break through, I don't jump all the way through and scar the other side of the wall. So I'm just going to stick this right in there, so if I go through, it'll stop. Boom. All right. There you have it. There's where this is the pressure relief port. So fluid is going to shoot out of this when the piston is compressed and moved up this way. And then the hole in the cap here is just going to let the air behind the piston out so it can move. And we're going to use a 10 millimeter tap for this part. Now this one's a little tricky for my tap because this inlet, or soon to be outlet, is in the way. So make sure it's straight up and down, and very carefully start. So you're going to go all the way down to the bottom of that barrel. It gets smaller at the bottom. That's the part we want to tap. Okay, I can feel it. It's starting to bite. Okay. Dump. Now we got to do a M4 tap. Yeah, M4. And you see this little hole here? I'll point to it with the tap here. We want to thread this hole. You can't do it from this side. You got to go through the opening of the barrel and line that up. And that could be a little tricky, but it's not too bad. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to kind of just eyeball it, and you can feel it when you get it right, and that feels like I got it. Okay, so it's a little dark. I'm going to use the light on my drill here. Hopefully you can see I'm coming through. So So that's how you do that one. That one's pretty easy. Okay, these are all rinsed out. Got all the oil out of there, got all the debris out of the barrel. Now we're going to make some more debris, because actually what's really important is we want to make sure the piston that we took out is going to continue to be able to slide back and forth within that barrel without hitting any anything. And we just drilled a hole through from the outside to the inside, so there's probably a little bit of burring that occurred on the inside. So what I've ended up doing is I'll just get this I think this is a 10 millimeter Allen wrench, and I'll wrap a piece of I think this is 320 grit, 400 grit, something like that, and kind of like tape it on there like so, and then just kind of go in there like so. You can kind of see it poking through, so I know it's going past this hole. And I'll kind of just bore it out, or hone it, I guess. It's kind of like honing out the cylinder. I'm not feeling, like a lot of times you'll feel it, if there's a good burr in there, you'll feel it catching the burr and taking care of it. But this one seems pretty clean. I'll give it a few turns here. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to, what is this? Here's the 600 grit. That's the noise you want to hear, because now you know it's really smooth. So you can use the stock spring. The problem is the piston, when we install the 10 millimeter set screw, we're going to screw this all the way in as far as it goes to the bottom here. This is going to cause the piston to sit higher up in the barrel from where it used to sit. It used to be down here. Now it's going to be up there. And because of that, the spring behind it is going to be compressed, which means it's going to be, you know, as you compress this, it gets harder and harder to compress. Which means you'll probably have to back this out. Instead of screwing the cap all the way in, you'll have to back it out a little bit, which is fine. That works. You know, as long as you use thread lock around there, it usually works fine. But alternatively, you can replace the spring with a smaller spring that's a little weaker and get the same effect while still being able to screw the cap all the way on. It's very difficult to get it calibrated perfectly to 1 bar. But you get it really close, as long as it's not going to crazy high pressures to cause damage to the plastic gear or pop any hoses or anything like that. You're good to go. So those are kind of the two ways to do it. You can either use the stock spring, or you can go with a weaker spring. I'm going to grab a weaker spring and the thread lock compound, and I'll be right back. So I'm a big fan of this stuff, Permatex Seal Plus Lock, especially for the brass fitting, since this hole's a little larger than you want it to be. It'll help seal. It'll help seal, and it will lock the fitting in there. I've already installed the 90-degree hose barb fitting, and now we're going to install the 10 millimeter and the 4 millimeter set screws to finish the modification here. So now we're going to do the 10 millimeter grub screw. You need a 6 millimeter Allen wrench to actually install it. So you You only need a little bit, and I would put it right in the middle. You don't want it, especially you don't want it near where the piston's going to be. So I'm just going to spread a little bit. So as you can see, not a whole lot. Okay, and I'm going to torque it pretty good. I'm going to look and make sure I don't see any oozing out into the cylinder. There's the tiniest little ring. Just see. All right. So now we let this cure. It takes up to 72 hours to fully cure. So now we're going to do the 4mm, which you need a 2mm Allen wrench to install. And on this one, what I'm going to do is not apply any of the thread lock compound yet. Instead, where'd it go? All right. This one can be a little tricky because you got to come in like this and you can't really see well. Try the other way. All right, I got it. And perhaps you can see it coming through. So what I usually do is I go a little farther than I need to go. I can just start, so it's almost hanging out. I can see a hole right there, right? So at this point, I'm going to take the thread locker and get a little bit sticking out. And I'm going to dab it right there. You can see that. It should be enough. You don't need a lot. You see that? So now I'm going to back it back through the hole. As you can see, it's getting on the threads. Okay, and now we want to actually calibrate it or turn it till it gets exactly to the right spot. You just want it not protruding. I don't know if that could be seen on video. You don't want it sticking out of the sidewall of the cylinder to stop the piston from moving. So you want to screw it in just until it's no longer protruding into the cylinder. So I see it a little bit, so I'm gonna turn it a little more. Maybe one, a little bit more turn of a turn. I'm gonna test it with the piston. Nope, the piston does not want to go down, so that means I didn't do it enough. A little more. Test again. All right, the piston went all the way through this time. Okay. All right, so we're going to test this pump. We previously in the video made the modifications to the pump, so now we have it set up on the stand here, and we're going to test the pressure. I'm going to go ahead and just start spinning it as high as this drill will let me go, and we shouldn't really see much pressure build in the system, but as I activate this valve here, we should see the pressure start to build as we add more back pressure, essentially. And the system should not allow us to go above 2 bar, even with complete blockage. And as long as we hover around 1 bar with partial blockage with the valve, then we're good to go. So here we go. You can see as we approach 1 bar, the release port starts to do its thing. The valve is fully closed. All the fluid is now coming out of the release port. Boom.